Okay, so that's really helpful because I've emceed a few events, and one of the things that's really shit is on the second day where nobody turns up in the morning because they're all hungover, and whoever the speakers are, they present to a half-empty room. So I'm going to ask you very kindly, however wasted you get, can you please set your alarms? Can you do everything you can to get up and be here in the morning when the event starts? Because it's great for Max and it's great for Roman, but it's also great for the speakers who've probably flown in from like America or somewhere far away to actually have a full room like this. So will you all promise to try and do that, please? Sorry, that sounded really patronizing, but you know what I mean. All right, cool. Roman wants to come on and say a couple of things, and then I'll introduce the panel after that.
Thanks, Peter. So just a short announcement. After this closing panel, we're going to close down this building. The after party is going to be over there. Lots of space, cold beer, food. And for those of you wondering where Max is, he's coming back. He's on his way here. So if you want to catch up with him, he's going to be back very soon. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Tomorrow it starts at 10 a.m. And I know it's going to be hard for everyone to come tomorrow in the morning, but it's going to be just as interesting as today. Okay, now the panel. Please welcome on stage. Guys?
Okay, so it's the final panel. It's an amazing panel as well. We've got Eric Voskuil, we've got Peter Todd, we've got Eric Lombrozo, we've got Samson Mow, we've got Oleg back. So I'm going to hand over some mics as I find them. Sorry. Here's one. Hello.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming. A few new faces, Samson, Oleg. No, I mean previous conference last year. Oh, right. You'd definitely not be here.
It's my first one.
Okay, so let me ask you the first question. So how far away do you think we are from the bear market? What's your sentiment currently?
How far away are we from the bear market? Like,
yeah, like just your gut feeling. Just share it.
I think we're getting close to the bull market. I don't know how far away we are from the bear market because we keep coming back down. Because HODLNOT keeps saying we'll never see something again, so we can see it again. But hopefully we're moving towards that massive bull run.
Okay. Anybody else wants to chime in? Yeah, I don't think you guys are traders. What do you sell?
It's all going to zero one day when the sun explodes.
Yeah, it's not turned on.
It's all going to zero one day when the sun explodes. One day the very last copy of the Bitcoin blockchain will get deleted.
I want to sell before that.
I expect there to be a few more bull runs and crashes, and it's like we need to see that more of that, because I think that people need to learn the lesson that you don't just cash out quickly, and so it's just I think we're going to see a lot more of these. I mean, at least a few more.
Right. So. I read a comment once on Reddit that said the beatings are going to continue until the morale gets better. So that's how it is. Beautiful. So guys, especially the question to all of the developers here, what's the current hype? Last year was Lightning, and Elizabeth was so energetic about it. What is it this year? But what is the hype that actually makes sense this year? That's not just hype.
So what I heard is that the deployment of the Taproot and Schnorr signatures is going to enable some cool, kind of private transaction swaps. And so we could expect a lot of drama similar to the SegWit adoption.
No, I hope not, really.
So it's going to be very interesting.
No.
It's just the Schnorr signatures, they come up every year since 2017.
No, I mean, someone would love to sabotage that. Right?
Well, now it's actually been implemented, and so it's ready for review, and people are looking at it, but people are still a little concerned. I think people are afraid that it's going to go the way that it went last time. I think that circumstances are very different, but nobody knows exactly what to expect because it's kind of uncharted territory.
Okay, makes sense. So Oleg, we've previously been talking about, you've just came back from Israel, from scaling Bitcoin, and you shared this opinion with me that a lot of developers right now in Bitcoin, there's a lot of segmentation. They all went on to build their own stuff that's not necessarily related to Bitcoin, and they're not building a lot of things on top of Bitcoin. Can you elaborate on that, and maybe we can get some opinions from other people on that?
Sure. So just to clarify, scaling Bitcoin is, on one hand, is kind of uniquely focused on development and engineering problems, but also it's kind of full of academic, community that where people explore very different options and different technologies and cryptography and some, blockchains and some low-level stuff, high-level stuff. And since it's hard to just, go and experiment and build things into Bitcoin, then naturally people try to, just either shoot for the stars and experiment with arbitrary stuff that we're not going to deploy tomorrow, so we could explore whatever, or build their own alternative blockchains. So it turns out that the crowd is consists of people who are very focused on their own preferred technology or preferred way of solving some preferred problem, and they're not united by one single immediate problem that they want to solve.
So sorry for interrupting, but at the same time, they're not really focused on the consensus layer too much right now. So if people want to experiment with a whole bunch of different ideas, I mean, the proposals that do require changes to consensus rules should be probably separated from the ones that do not. And I think that a lot of these proposals, I mean, if people want to play around with this, I think it's good for there to be experimentation, and even if they want to just do it on their own, and
No, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just it's kind of hard to learn something because everyone has their own favorite pet project, and you get two kinds of feedback. Either it's a cool idea, or I have criticism, but my criticism is my own pet project. Take it as a whole package. So it's kind of hard to drill into some specifics and kind of learn something.
Well, remember that the first scaling Bitcoin, really the first two scaling Bitcoins sort of had a goal in the sense that there was one in September or so, and the idea is you'd go propose some stuff, and then another one in December or so, and you'd go discuss some of the proposals and kind of where it went. It was sort of this we will go scale Bitcoin. Whereas the impression I get is, it's more like an academic conference these days. And at least for my own personal work, and I can say I've been doing this since 2012, having this approach, which is, why would I ever want to go build something that requires other people to go change to let me do what I want to do? This is why things like my Open Timestamps projects, as an example, are specifically designed so that they do not require changes to Bitcoin to implement, to the point where it's difficult to go make changes to Bitcoin to prohibit them. And I think it's just a logical strategy, and if you can do that, you might as well.
Samson, so Blockstream is exclusively focused on Bitcoin, it seems. Everything it builds is centered around Bitcoin. And it doesn't look like you guys are building something that's unrelated to Bitcoin. Do you have anything to say about that? I mean, do you have any plans to, diversify in a sense?
Diversify into alts, or?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, but
No, not really. I mean, like you said, everything that we're working on at Blockstream is to kind of augment Bitcoin, whether it's satellites or wallets or sidechains or Lightning. But I guess mirroring what Peter's saying, we don't really want to focus on anything that requires, I guess, consensus level changes. Like recently, Miniscript was released. That's just to make Bitcoin scripting easier to do. And I think it's kind of a bridge until simplicity is ready for mainstream. But we can also experiment a lot on Liquid and implementing things in Liquid and testing them before they potentially could make it to Bitcoin mainnet.
Is there something in the Bitcoin ecosystem that's being built right now that Blockstream thinks it's not going to work? We're not going to invest time in learning this or building around this. Something that most people think is going to be interesting, but you don't.
I don't know. Most of the projects we're working on are centered around Liquid right now. So I don't think anyone's really thinking about that kind of angle that you just mentioned.
Okay, fair enough. Eric, so let's talk about altcoins, because I know you're not exactly a Bitcoin maximalist, and you're more concerned with crypto economics.
Which Eric?
Voskuil, of course. And also, can I talk about the thing that we talked previously about Vietnam? Can I mention that?
Sure.
Okay.
Which thing?
Conference? Okay. So you're planning a conference, and there's no Bitcoin word in it. but it's going to be focused on economics. So do you think there's place in crypto economics for altcoins? Do you think we're past that completely, or do you think some developers should be concerned with working on, something that might complement this ecosystem?
It's a lot of questions. I'll pick
sorry.
one. So the approach I take to Bitcoin definitions, which are, there's a series of things. We're talking about the concepts that define Bitcoin, which are broader than any implementation or even any set of consensus rules. There's this conceptual security model, right? I call it cryptodynamic principles, the things that make it work. And you can make it work with a different Genesis block, for example. Like so there's the history, there's consensus rules, there's implementations, there's a set of concepts. And so the way I look at it, if we're working on the set of concepts, there may be good implementations, there may be bad implementations in terms of, providing better or worse levels of security, but they're all the same concepts. And so I draw a pretty clear line between that and something that does not conform to those principles. I don't work on that other stuff. I have no interest in, proof of stake coins or Ether or anything like that. But we brought in a couple of minor code changes so we can conditionally run Litecoin. To me, that's just another implementation of those
Theoretically, altcoin season might be back. I think that's what people are.
I'm not a trader. I don't make predictions. I don't care about these things. To me, it's just that's making it possible to build on this set of principles and make cool stuff. So,
I remember your predictions from last year. You said 50% of the predictions are going to be wrong. Did that turned out to be true?
I think I was right. Prove me wrong.
Okay, fair enough. Anybody else want to?
Well, I just wanted to add that, so actually Eric and I had a really nice chat about this in Tel Aviv a couple of days ago, or a few days ago. And I think that we kind of came to the conclusion that, no matter what, there's trade-offs in any network. And for instance, in Bitcoin, fees secure the network. And any network that has a sufficient demand, the fees are going to rise and it will price out certain transactions. And then there's going to be a need for other networks to kind of fill that role. If they're going to have different security trade-offs or different trust models, they might be priced differently on the markets. So there might be a need for that, but I have no clue how that would actually work.
So that's what a lot of people really don't get. I think they think, okay, there's an altcoin and transactions are cheap, but as soon as this altcoin gets popular enough, the fees are going to rise, and that's just reality.
I mean, I'd go point out though, you said in Bitcoin fees secure the network. And for the most part, they don't right now. We're still in the high inflation,
which is why nobody cares about it right now.
Well, yeah, and I think probably one of the more interesting things we will see in terms of so-called altcoins in the future is what does happen to inflation over the long run. Whereas I would then also go point out, for instance, like hearing, what Blockstream's doing. When I go look at Blockstream, I see a company that does go and do a lot of sort of altcoin-ish things in a sense, in that,
Liquid's not an altcoin.
But Liquid supports tokens, right? All the stuff that makes sense for alternate.
Bitcoin supports tokens too if you have RGB.
Yeah, they do.
Right.
I mean, I would say to the extent that this stuff makes sense, I'm by virtue of being involved in RGB and being involved with a whole bunch of alt things, alt financial instruments. It's just that the altcoin model that we hear about where, I'm going to go make a ton of money by doing an ICO, that just doesn't make sense. So of course Blockstream's not going to get involved. I mean, I'm not going to get involved either. But if you want to go and issue shares of, your company, sure, I'll write some accounting software for that.
I want to go back to Oleg's talk earlier today, and the talk's title was "All Cryptography is Bad and You Should Feel Sad." But the question is, should we? Is it that bad?
No, it's awesome, of course. So here's the thing. We're indeed living in a renaissance of cryptography. There's a new, a larger crowd of people, probably mostly because of the blockchains, or maybe because of the Snowden in 2013. So now everyone kind of cares about encryption stuff. So there's kind of new generation of people coming to do engineering research and things in cryptography, and blockchains with this direct kind of financing of crazy experimentation, it all kind of makes the whole field bloom, and it's kind of easy to get carried away. So the purpose of the talk was to actually show the thing behind the curtains, like how volatile and crazy the field was or is currently, because this is usually a folklore that if you get involved with cryptography and you learn it from people like in person. So I'd like just to share this with more people. So maybe cryptography would feel more approachable because you would not feel like, oh, it's just for some very wise, very special people, and I'm a mere mortal, I cannot do anything about it. Well, it turns out everyone who was involved in cryptography for the last 40 years were just like normal people who don't sometimes know exactly what they're doing. So.
But you still don't want to deploy your own cryptographic algorithm, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
Eric, I know you have some thoughts on that as well.
I mean, I got to see like the SecP 256K1 library actually built from scratch.
Wait, what's that?
That's the crypto library that replaced the OpenSSL library, which is actually much better tested and more robust and much better performant and everything. It was Peter Vele, so he can get away with stuff that the rest of us probably cannot. I probably wouldn't want to roll out my own crypto library without having it reviewed by people that actually know what the hell they're doing. But there are opportunities to do a lot of really interesting stuff with crypto that have not been done before. And I think that people are starting to discover all these different crypto primitives that could be used for really cool things. How we actually can integrate them into Bitcoin is really tricky. I think with soft forks we could do a lot of stuff, but then there's also there's a whole deployment issue and like how we actually get a soft fork activated and all that. But there's a lot of really cool stuff that's going on as far as for that.
So there's another thing that we discussed just a few minutes ago about the fact that scaling is not necessarily a problem in Bitcoin, and maybe that concerns Blockstream as well. But trust is something that we need to think hard about. What's Blockstream's take on it, on scaling specifically? Is that really a problem, or is there something else?
In what sense, like base layer scaling?
No, just like trust, not in terms of cryptography or development, but just like, maybe Eric can formulate that question better.
Yeah, I guess I was suggesting this to Roman. But I think basically what we're really trying to solve for is trust, scaling trust. Scaling computer databases is not really that novel of a problem. And if we have trust solved, then there's very simple solutions to build a network where you can have a ledger and just update it and people can know their balances and it's not a problem. The problem is that people don't trust each other. Bitcoin is trying to solve that problem. So if we have a network that is technically scalable in terms of the number of transactions, TPS or transactions per second and throughput, if we don't consider the trust model, it's pretty much useless because we can probably outcompete that just with other stuff that we already have right now. And any of these blockchains that you see right now can be outcompeted easily by technology that's already existed probably for decades if we don't care about the trust model. So the trust, really, we're trying to scale trust, and that's the difficult problem. And I think that gets lost, especially a lot with like the utility token kind of talk and all that kind of stuff. We're not those. If you're talking about building something that's going to be an asset, right, an asset class, you want to make sure that it's provably scarce. And really, it's the trust model that really makes it that with Bitcoin.
Peter is anxiously disagreeing with that. I can see that.
Well, so I sort of agree with you in the sense that I think trust matters, but and I gotta admit, my opinion on this has changed in the past few years, but we're not very good at even scaling databases.
Well, they're definitely better than blockchains scale. I mean, we have.
But in fact, I think blockchains end up being a really critical part of scaling databases because the hard part about scaling databases winds up being trust. And not sort of the Bitcoin style of trust where you want to decentralize and all that, but even like really simple questions like, all right, now we have 5 different computers running the same database. How are we actually going to go audit what those 5 different computers did? It turns out and again, I didn't really realize this until I started doing sort of more corporate consulting and really looking at the details, and it turns out we don't actually have good ways of auditing simple things like databases.
That's a trust issue. That's not really,
But it's sort of both. And to go say that we have simple solutions, for instance, scaling a database, I don't even think that's actually true. The likes of PayPal are very insecure systems even within themselves.
It's secure because of, where does
if I were PayPal, I would be terrified of my own sysadmins going and compromising it. That's the sort of insecurity I'm talking about. Whereas something like Liquid, it certainly has the trust issue nailed, but doesn't have the scaling issue nailed. Liquid doesn't scale right now. It certainly can scale better than Bitcoin in the sense that you throw very expensive hardware at it. But you can't just throw arbitrary amounts of hardware at it and still have it work. You need to rework how the consensus in Liquid works and how the blockchain structure in Liquid works.
Well, I think with Snort signatures, we can scale it up, and we can also increase the Liquid block size. So with Lightning and Liquid together, because now you can have Lightning on Liquid, that addresses another angle of the scaling.
But see, you'd expect in something like Liquid, given that your trust model, you'd expect to be able to just throw hardware at the problem and scale it up indefinitely, but you actually can't, because Liquid uses a Bitcoin-like blockchain.
Yeah, but you can, and we just haven't pushed the limits yet of what we can achieve in that
The
direction.
question shouldn't be pushing the limits. The question should be, oh yeah, this is easy. I'll go buy 100 servers rather than 10. There shouldn't be limits. Whereas, like, say, a key value database, or sort of more a thing that, is what the big internet companies go use to go scale things. I mean, that's the kind of architecture where it's dead easy to scale and you just throw hardware at the problem.
That's what I was talking about.
Whereas Liquid is not that.
I'm talking about that's the problem that's solved. And the ones that you bring up are more the trust issues. And actually, I'm glad that you're more paranoid than I am probably about this, and we need someone that kind of throws these kinds of opinions out there. But I'm not saying that the database technology right now is like the end all be all. Like it can't be improved. Obviously, it can be improved a lot more, and there's limits to how much it can scale right now. But I don't think that that's the bottleneck for adoption of Bitcoin.
I think it's actually the bottleneck for adoption of fintech. So in cases where you have fintech-like things where money is irrevocable and you do not have a way of fixing compromises, the impression I get, talking to clients is we don't actually have good tech for this. We're very close. We're not quite there yet, and it's a bit of a myth to think we are. Whereas then for like scaling Bitcoin at say base layers, and I think we'd all agree on it, we just don't really know what the path forward is, other than solutions like Lightning, which of course aren't the base layer.
I think I have time for one more question. Maybe we can take a few questions from the audience. But Eric, I want to go back to this concept of black market money. It's my favorite one, honestly, of yours, because it's so simple to really understand in a few words. And I want to talk. I know you just analyze things, but maybe you don't have any specific opinion, and that's why this question is addressed to everyone. But where do you think we are right now? Because it seemed like over the past year, we've seen both positive trends and negative trends in terms of institutional investors, governments, proposing laws in various jurisdictions. Where do you think we are? Is it getting slightly better, or is it just an illusion?
Better than what? I don't.
Better in terms of
there's clearly more regulatory interest than there was a year ago.
Interest is kind of a neutral word, isn't it?
I mean, it's the first step, right? I mean, I sat at Oxford while some ECB regulators and others talked about their interest in what we do. And they were like, yeah, we keep an eye on it. It's not very big, so we got other stuff to do, basically, right? And so it's not, it's big to us, but it's not as big to them yet. And that's because it's not costing them enough money yet. And when it does, presumably they'll take an interest. But we've seen, I think in the last year, attempts to establish global regulations on money laundering relative to cryptos, and it's just it takes time for those things to happen.
How do you tell when they're starting to take serious interest? Like, what are the clues that?
Well, I mean, the whole Facebook thing, right, was interesting, even though irrelevant to us, relevant to them, because they don't understand it, right?
Do you think it was, I have this stupid conspiracy theory that maybe it was just poking and seeing how the crypto community sort of looks at it, and obviously most people just dismissed it as not a real cryptocurrency. And then I'm like, okay.
It's not, my terminology, cryptocurrency doesn't mean anything to me, right? What's that term mean? I don't know. But it's not a Bitcoin, which means it doesn't have the security model that Bitcoin has. And the other stuff doesn't, in my opinion, or my analysis, doesn't have any security model. So it's not a Bitcoin, so I don't care. It's not interesting. Can't be secured against regulatory attack, or can't exist as a black market thing, at least not run by Facebook. So okay, not interesting, but they're interested because they don't know the difference, right? And even if they do understand that difference, if they let some company run a centralized alternative currency, then they've surrendered their control over the money. And so when somebody big enough, with enough people interested, starts doing something like that, they take an interest. And that's why they don't take an interest with us, because it's not big enough to them yet to care. When it starts doing the things that we imagine it doing, presumably they'll care. How far are we? I don't know. I mean, I don't make predictions, you know? It may never happen. We may never get big enough that they actually care. But if this is about saving people money...
Wouldn't it be the best outcome? Like, if it just never gets big enough, but it's good enough for us?
It's good enough right now. I mean, you know, I use Bitcoin. Anybody use Bitcoin for stuff that's interesting? I don't know. So it does work. And maybe that'll all be all it ever is. I don't know. I don't make those predictions. But the security model of Bitcoin, the conceptual security model, is designed to defend against certain things. And those things may or may not happen. And if they don't happen, we have this illusion that it's, you know, got some other security model, which it doesn't really have, which is more political security. It's certainly not a political security model, but if people want to not regulate it, they can do that.
Anybody else? Do you think we are getting closer to the black market money with Bitcoin or not? I mean, Oleg, what do you think? I definitely know you do have opinions about that. It's just like, you're very careful.
So there is a market, right, on the planet Earth, and Bitcoin has this property that it allows more people to just join that market. And I guess we'll have some kind of hints of more and more people kind of opening this market, and we may not even kind of label it as a black market. Maybe it will be just like a new territory of freedom, like someone said, that will be just kind of slowly be gained. For instance, consider the cross-border payments when people work in one country and send money to families. Like, it's a huge business, and my impression is that this whole business model, there's like tons of money being made, is pretty much doomed, because, you know, in like some number of years, people could just send Bitcoin from one place to another over the Bitcoin network and completely bypass all these like middlemen. So you can imagine that it would be done in like a black market way, or it will just happen. It will not be disallowed, but it will be possible to do.
Well, if it's purposely evading currency controls, it is black market. It's not legal, right? So it doesn't mean it has to be attacked. It just means it's not allowed, and people do it anyway, and that's the point, right? It helps people do that. But these are not white market activities. They're just people getting away with them.
Does Blockstream anticipate any...
Black markets?
No, what I was going to say is any interaction with the regulators, because Liquid, the use case for Liquid is, you know, transferring money between exchanges, as far as I understand.
Right, but the exchanges are KYCing, or most of the exchanges are KYCing their users, unless it's like a decentralized exchange or something. So
then you need to make sure that Liquid is only used by those exchanges that are KYC.
Well, no, anybody can take it, because you can run your own Liquid node or run a Liquid wallet. So it's the same as Bitcoin. We just consider it another form of Bitcoin that just moves a little bit faster. And the Liquid network itself, we consider it as a common carrier, because it's kind of like all the traffic is encrypted, like say Proton Mail. We don't really know, the members don't know what is being sent to who and what it is, because of confidential assets and confidential transactions. So I don't really see it being something that will be drawing regulatory oversight.
Got it. All right, do we have any questions? Okay, over there.
Yes, I wanted to ask if it's dangerous at some point for the incentives of Bitcoin if a specific side chain gets more hash rate than the total of Bitcoin. Suppose that gets the hash rate of Bitcoin and all the other forks, or some of the other forks. Is that dangerous at some point?
I mean, you got to define what exact type of sidechain you're talking about. Now, if we're talking about merge mine sidechain, I would go and say, you know, in a way that's not so much dangerous, but rather would redefine what Bitcoin even is. You know, sidechains are this weird thing where there's can be sort of like a soft fork, but not really. And I think once you get them at that point, you know, they're big enough that they've essentially changed the definition of what Bitcoin is, most likely. And they've kind of done so too without permission. You know, it's a weird kind of hybrid of things, and also it's why I would often call sidechains an attack on Bitcoin, and it's just not, merge mine sidechains. It's not an attack we really know how to prevent. I hope we find further research that lets us do that, but that kind of risk I think is a very real one, and it's just not a risk we know how to stop.
I don't think it's a real risk. I mean, if you had a merge mine sidechain with hash rate overtaking Bitcoin, then technically some altcoin could do the same thing, and we don't see that happening.
But the difference is that you have a connection between the miners of Bitcoin and the miners of the sidechain in a way that doesn't happen between Bitcoin and the altcoin. You've got the people mining Bitcoin now have to go process the sidechain and are influenced by the technical capabilities of the sidechain. A very simple example being if the sidechain has gigabyte-sized blocks.
Right, but then you can have merge mine coins like Litecoin and other script coins, and the lower level ones like Dogecoin won't overtake Litecoin.
Well, again, I would say if somehow Dogecoin went and got more transaction volume, more profit than Litecoin did, absolutely, Dogecoin would effectively overtake Litecoin and screw up the incentive model for Litecoin. So long as you're in a situation where miners want to do two things at once and need to do those two things be profitable, you've screwed up the incentive model.
Right, but how can you? I don't see how you can get there. Like nothing we've seen points to that ever happening.
Well, let's suppose that Dogecoin happens to work really, really well and has like confidential transactions or something and is far more attractive to use than Litecoin. I mean, why wouldn't it on technical basis?
Then Litecoin could do the same thing, right?
But now Litecoin has had to go change because of Dogecoin, and we're back to exactly the scenario I talked about. Either way, we force something to go change due to ultimately market forces. It's like I say, it's a forced change, and I would call that an attack, and I don't really know how to solve it.
Right. It's a draw. Okay. You guys over there, please. And when you ask your question, please address who this question is for, or is it for everyone?
So I've got a question. We have an economy, that fuel economy, and we are compared to a car speeding along the 200 kilometers per hour. Right now, since 2001, we have something like an exit strategy. People might possibly shift into Bitcoin. Interest rates are very low, so the first banks might get bankrupt and collapsing some economy. Isn't that like shifting the car from 200 kilometers an hour and then putting it in the reverse? Aren't we gonna break something along the way?
Who's that question for?
To the Fed chairman.
So it's like...
The answer is yes.
That's the beauty of the question. Nobody wants to answer.
Maybe that was a question to the central bankers.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad's an economist.
Coping with this situation or like make onboarding more smooth. I mean, this is fucking dangerous and scary.
I mean, my dad's a conventionally Keynesian trained economist, and when he goes and looks at negative interest rates, he's just like, oh boy. And that's the reality. Like, they've just pushed the economy into a scenario where even under conventional Keynesian economic theories, it's a real like toss-up as to what the heck is going to happen. I mean, that's just the way they've done it. And yeah, things could end up in a total disaster. And part of the thinking behind like Keynesian economics is essentially that there'd be enough political restraint to go use these levers of interest rates for something good and not get carried away. But good luck on that. So.
No, but the issue is they think that using those levers right now, the way they are using them, is good.
Well, politically, it sure is good for them.
I'm not even sure that they think that it's good. I think that every politician is just trying to like delay the disaster so like it doesn't happen on their watch, right?
Yeah. That's the problem with the low time preference.
Are there any central bankers in the audience to get a different perspective? Okay, none. All right, let's wrap it up then. Thanks a lot, everyone. Round of applause. And see you tomorrow.
No chemistry.